is entitled The Emperor's New Clothes. Now, Hans Christian Andersen, he wrote this story, The Emperor's New Clothes, and it was first published in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1837. The story really briefly here is, so we can recap, there was an emperor who was like a president today, was more interested in his clothing than he was in anything else in his empire, his little kingdom. One day, these two rogues came into town. Some synonyms for the word rogue would be villain, trickster, swindler, cheat. These rogues, they presented themselves as weavers and declared that they would weave the finest clothing that anyone could imagine. They said that not only were their colors and their patterns uncommonly beautiful, but the clothes made out of this cloth that they could create possessed the wonderful quality that the clothes became invisible to anyone who was unfit for the office that they held or were just incorrigibly dumb. So the emperor thought, well, gee, if I wore these, I'd be able to find out what men in my empire are not fit for the positions that they held, and I could tell the clever people from the dunces. So the two scoundrels put up their two looms, and they pretended to start working. They didn't have anything on these looms at all because there was nothing to put on them. They demanded lots of money, the finest silk, and the costliest gold, and they, of course, put all that in their pockets and bags, and they worked on these empty looms till late at night. The emperor sent some of his most trusted persons in to check on the progress, and of course, they couldn't see anything because there was nothing to see. But these deceitful frauds continued with their masquerade of weaving this imaginary cloth, weaving their lie, and they described the colors, and they explained the strange patterns to these people, and the emperor had sent, and since they didn't want to lose their position, they didn't want to lose their job, their money, they listened attentively to what these guys had to say so that they could repeat it to the emperor. They were letting these racketeers tell them how to think, and we had gone through that in the sermonette, Think for Yourselves. Now every day, these savage racketeers, the definition of a racketeer is a person who commits crimes such as extortion, loan sharking, bribery, and obstruction of justice in the furtherance of illegal business activities. So these savage racketeers kept asking for more money and silk and gold, and the word had gotten out, of course. It leaked out, and the masses heard all about this special cloth. And all the people in the city, they knew what particular power this cloth was supposed to possess. And everyone was anxious to see how bad or how dumb their friends and neighbors were. So finally, it came time to unveil this special cloth that these vicious swindlers had created out of thin air. And they pretended to dress the emperor, and when they pretended that they were finished, the emperor marched down the street, and no one would let it be perceived that they couldn't see anything. That would show that they were not fit for their position or that they were dumb, so they didn't want to be discredited or anything. I mean, these clothes that the emperor was sporting were clothes that had never received such success like this before. So if they were to admit that they knew it was fake, they'd be called a conspiratist or something. So they decided to be sycophants like everyone else. And the definition of a sycophant is a servile self-seeker who attempts to win favor by flattering influential people. So nobody said anything negative about it, except for this one little boy who finally yelled out, "But he's not wearing any clothes." Ew. And That did get the others to start talking. More and more people caught on, and the emperor could hear them, and he knew that they were right, but he and his cohorts followed through with this procession, and they didn't want to end this charade. They'd put too much time into it. They didn't want to admit that it was make-believe, and it really didn't exist at all. And as I said, that was first published in 1837 in Copenhagen. Speaking of Copenhagen, like that segue, let's go from 1837 back to the future. But the only power source capable of generating the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity that I need is a bolt of lightning. Sorry, that was Dr. Emmett Brown. According to the Associated Press and a few other reliable sources, just before Thanksgiving 2009, some hackers hacked in to the computer system of the University of East Anglia in Eastern England and gained access to data at its climate research unit. David J. touched on this last week, I believe. Glad he didn't go any further. I'd had to write a new sermonette. This supposedly is a well-respected climate change research center that conducts internal correspondence between the UN as well as other universities that the UN uses to certify their global warming theory. It appears these hackers were from Russian descent, since these emails and documents first appeared on a Russian FTP server. FTP just stands for File Transfer Protocol, and it's just a server set up for quick file transfers. This data leak came weeks before the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen. That's the segue, where 192 nations seek to reach a binding treaty. This was to happen in the first 2 weeks of December 2009, which at the time of this recording, we're about at the tail end of this meeting, so we should be hearing some results soon. This information in these emails and documents shows that scientists have overstated the case of global warming, and that the documents contain proof that some researchers have attempted to manipulate the data. It's going to be a little difficult to read all these emails and documents because there's over 4,500 of them. I'm not going to read them here today, don't worry. This has been going on for quite some time. And here's a comment from a Professor David Deming on his article that he had published in a science magazine. Quote, "With the publications of my article in Science in 1995, I gained significant credibility in the community of scientists working on climate change." Now, these are the guys that are working at that university that got hacked. So I'll continue the quote. "I gained significant credibility in the community of scientists working on climate change. They thought I was one of them, someone who would pervert science in the service of social and political causes. So one of them let his guard down. A major person working in the area of climate change and global warming sent me an astonishing email that said, 'We must get rid of the medieval warm period.'" End quote. He was stating that they needed to get rid of some data that was not coinciding with what they wanted to present. So this major person that Professor David Deming referenced as to the one that sent him the email was Jonathan Overpeck, and you'll find the name Jonathan Overpeck all over these emails and documents that are circulating in the internet. And here are some actual quotes from some of these emails. Quote, "I've just completed Mike's nature trick of adding in the real temps." Well, wait a minute now. Why weren't they using the real temperatures in the first place? Again, "I've just completed Mike's nature trick of adding in the real temps to each series for the last 20 years, i.e. from 1981 onward, and from 1961 for Keith to hide the decline." End quote. The decline is in this hockey stick graph that they tried to present to people to show that the temperatures are going down when actually They're not. The scientist claims that he has had to use additional data in order to hide the decline of global temperatures. This guy is now backpedaling. He's trying to say that the word trick is just a generic term in the science field. But you can argue over all the nouns and adjectives on your own time. The problem's not that he called the technique a trick. The problem is that the intent of his technique is to fool people into thinking something is going on that is in fact not going on. This is deceptive, this is a lie, and this is fraud. There are even notes by the programmers in their code on how to engage in fraud. Here's a quote from an email that's dated in October of 2009. The fact is that we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it is a travesty that we can't. So I guess it's okay for them to just manipulate the numbers any way they want. One of the things that stands out is the overall tone of these emails, the nastiness, the viciousness, the personal comments about people in their attempts to control the whole journal process. They attack individual scientists and editors of journals that try to point out the inconsistencies in their data. If an editor is going to do a story and he requires a number of independent names to act as possible reviews for his edited story, these people provide these names, and of course, they're always of their own people. These people are all publishing together and peer reviewing each of their literature. Now, the UN has 300 scientists, which they claim are their chief climatologists, but over 30,000 top scientists around the world in the last few years alone have countered the information that these 300 scientists claim as truth. Now, how do they figure? Missed a page. Each segment in and of itself is objectionable, but you put it all together where they are literally controlling the climate science, and anybody that dares question that what they're saying, anybody whose opinion disagrees with theirs, is scorned and discredited. They don't want to hear about it. Let's turn our Bibles and see what God has to say about that. We'll turn to Proverbs 15. We'll read verses 12, and then we'll read verse 22. Proverbs 15, verse 12. A scorner loves not one that reproves him, neither will he go unto the wise. Now let's drop down to verse 22. Proverbs 15, verse 22. Without counsel, purposes are disappointed. Now, disappointed here is number 6565 in the Hebrew Strong's Concordance. It means dissolve, cause to cease, bring to nothing, or you could say discredit. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established. So, if they would listen to others, they would be established. Of course, they would have to present the truth, and they don't want to do that. They would rather continue to warp this data and prove this global warming theory, and if something is not true, then it's known as fiction. And that makes this scientific global warming theory fall under the category of science fiction. United Nations scientist Phil Jones, for the past 5 years, has refused to release any of the data from this university, saying it's proprietary. Dude, it's just about weather. What's so secret about it? I mean, anyway, this is the same information that the UN is using to impose the global carbon tax. These are the taxes that they want to put on beef. They're putting taxes on having only one child, large screen TVs. They're imposing these taxes in their attempt to control everything. They create the crisis and offer their own expansion of power as the solution. Now, how do they figure that global warming is going to kill us all unless we pay higher taxes? I don't get it. So I guess if we pay tax to the UN, it's just going to go away? If you recall a few years ago, Al Gore was caught trying to claim that when carbon dioxide goes up, that is what causes temperatures to go up. But it was revealed that he had flipped those charts. The reality is when temperatures go up, then carbon dioxide goes up. And there's nothing wrong with carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is good. A human exhales about 5.5 pounds of carbon dioxide on average per day. This is the stuff that plant life uses to survive. Plant life, in turn, produces oxygen, which is the stuff that humans and animals use to survive. They're trying to make life and respiration, breathing, a criminal offense. As part of the design of global warming, which was stated in their own words, is to destroy the industrial society. And the industrial society is what made the United States so big and powerful. What we've seen so far is evidence that this team of scientists has engaged in conspiracy, government fraud, computer fraud, obstruction of justice, environmental law violations, suppression of evidence, tampering with evidence, public corruption, bribery. That's not everything either, but we don't have time. Of course, that should be enough to shut this thing down and have these people put on trial, but it won't happen. 25 years ago, it was decided that they would set up the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change as a political body rather than a scientific one. This will be the Trojan horse by which the UN can achieve its long-held ambition of turning itself into a dictatorial world government. Unlike in the past, people like Hitler who had tried to do it using war, they're using bureaucratic, stealthy coup d'etat. Coup d'etat's definition is the sudden illegal overthrow of government, sometimes by force, usually by a small group of persons in or previously in positions of authority. They're not going to let go of this. They're not going to throw up their hands and go, oh, you caught us. They're not going to be throwing away over 25 years of work on this program that they've been building in the background. They're going to have to continue their lie. Let's turn to John 8 and we'll read verse 44. Let's see where they learned this. We're all probably familiar with this verse anyway. John 8, verse 44, you are of your father, the devil. The lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. That just said that the strategy of Satan is to murder. The tactic by which he accomplishes this is through lies. Satan uses lies and twists things around, even twists things backwards if necessary. I mean, have you seen out there on YouTube, I'm sure a lot of you already have, where Barack Obama's acceptance speech in Chicago, November 2008, he kept repeating, and he had the crowd chanting repeatedly the phrase, yes, we can. What these videos were doing were playing it backwards. And it's very strange for those of you who haven't heard this yet. And since I like to try and prove all things, I went out to the internet and I downloaded some free software for recording and editing sounds. It's called Audacity. And I encourage all of you to go out there and try this for yourself. Because as I said before, don't believe anything that you hear. even if it comes from up here, so don't believe a word that I'm saying until you have gone out and proved it for yourself. So I downloaded this software. It's called Audacity, Audacity, for those of you who want to download this. And I recorded myself saying, yes, we can. I repeated it a couple times with affliction in different areas of the term, and then I just clicked up on the menu bar the word effect, which produced a drop-down menu, and I selected reverse. And I played it backwards. And it said, thank you, Satan. So, I want to double check my work. So I recorded myself saying, thank you, Satan. And I played that backwards. And it said, yes, we can. So, at this acceptance speech in Chicago, the crowd was repeatedly chanting, thank you, Satan. Think for yourselves and make your own conclusions on this. Anyway, these people don't seem to, these scientists don't seem to care whether you're an accredited scientist or not. If you don't agree with them, they'll just discredit you and claim that you're not a scientist. So I think I know how that I can get in on some of these millions that they've extorted from us. All I have to do is pretend that I agree with them, because they like make-believe. Then, all I need to do is manipulate the numbers, make lies appear to be true. Now, how easy is it to manipulate numbers? Well, luckily, someone left one of these up here. So I'm going to show you. If we take 25 and we divide it by 5, I'm sure most of you out there are thinking, well, that number is 5. Well, that number's too low. It makes the temperatures look like they're going down. We need higher numbers. How are we going to do that? Well, 5 doesn't go into 2, but it does go into 5 one time. So let's subtract that. Now, we didn't use the 2, so let's bring that down. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So there. 5 goes into 20 14 times. Now, great. When I was growing up, learning math as a youngster, I was taught to check my work to prove my work. And to prove a division problem, you use multiplication. So, 5 times 14. 4 times 5 is 20. 1 times 5 is 5. So there you have 25. It's easy enough. But I like to double check my work. So, multiplication is simply addition, adding a number multiple times. So if you take 14 5 times, 4 and 4 is 8, 4 more is 12, 4 more is 16, 4 more is 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you go. So now we have just scientifically proved that 25 divided by 5 is 14. So, anytime, yeah, I think I'm going to be a millionaire off of this. Or at least I can make it look like that on paper. So anytime you see that an emperor has no clothes, don't hesitate to say so. Bring it to the attention of others and expose this charade, so to speak. And until next time, don't accept the mark, and let's make all our days worthy of God's blessings. Thank you.
There will be setbacks. Skepticism over.
Newswatch Magazine presents the analysis of world news in the light of Bible prophecy with David J. Smith.
On November 3rd, 1992, Bill Clinton won, according to the electoral vote, a landslide. Therefore, the newspapers and the news media began to come out and say that the American people has given him a mandate for change in America. But is that true? According to the popular vote, Mr. Bill Clinton only won 2.75% over President Bush. So was that a real overwhelming mandate for change in America? And if change is to come, what kind of change will it be? After all, Mr. Bill Clinton is a young person of the 60s, wasn't he? The radical 60s? We need to get a little background on Mr. Bill Clinton to understand what kind of change is going to take place. In his administration, he went to Georgetown University to be trained. There he met Professor Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley was an insider with an establishment, with those working for world government. He then referred Bill Clinton to Oxford University in England so that he could be trained on a Rhodes Scholar for globalism and the one world government agenda. When he came back from Oxford University and on his Rhodes Scholarship, he went to Yale University to attain his law degree, the same university where former President George Bush was a part of the Skull and Bones fraternity, an ultra-secret organization. From there, Bill Clinton went into Arkansas, where he was from. He became governor of that state. During his first term as governor, he did something very exceptional. He created what is called a governor's school. This governor's school took the elite, the most highly educated, the individuals with the best grades in the state of Arkansas in high school, sent them to a 6 weeks training period during the summer, where they could only go home on July 4th. And then they were discouraged the rest of the time forever going home to see their parents during the 6 week period. They were warned in advance that the children might change after going to the governor's school, but they were told that's only because they're educated and they had grasped new concepts. But really what it was, as we will prove by documentation, that Mr. Bill Clinton and his governor's school began to break down the Christian morality of all of these students. It smashed their belief in God, in Christianity, and in the principles of the Bible. And it began to introduce them, and if you will, I'll use the term initiate them into the New Age movement by introducing them to demons as we know them in Christianity. In the Bible, they're called demons, but in the occult world, in the New Age movement, they call them spirit guides, masters of wisdom, wise persons who are disembodied. They just live in the spirit realm that will come and guide and enlighten us to move us into the new world order. Then Mr. Bill Clinton, who is now President of the United States, selected as his running mate Mr. Al Gore from Tennessee, who has even written a book, and he believes in the New Age theology of pantheism. Yes, for the first time in the history of the United States, we now have a team going into the White House, which is New Age all the way. They're Democrats with a Democrat House and a Democratic Senate. Now with a Democratic president and vice president, they're going to accelerate the movement, the agenda for the new world order by the year 2000. And yet, what was this governor's school that now President Bill Clinton had introduced years ago into the state of Arkansas? Will he introduce this on a nationwide scale to the students and the young peoples here in America? I think every parent ought to know. Every person in America better be aware of the New Age agenda which Mr. Bill Clinton is introducing. And after we discuss with absolute proof the New Age agenda in this governor's school, we'll talk about the New World Economic Order.
In 1979, the man who had governed Arkansas for more than a decade implemented an agenda, an activist agenda intended to change the future of the state. The essence of that agenda is perhaps best reflected in the Arkansas education bureaucracy, a crucial part of the Clinton administration and Clinton plan for the future. The policies that drive the education agenda in Arkansas are specific, unusual, somewhat experimental, and they appear to have failed miserably. Today, the state ranks near the bottom nationally, 45th in literacy and 44th in performance on standard achievement tests. Yet Bill Clinton defends even the most radical of his policies. He argues that he has not failed, but succeeded, raising the question, just what is Bill Clinton's idea of educational success? The Clinton administration recently answered that question with a one-hour documentary. The show describes Clinton's dream come true, a model for statewide education reform. Correctly named the Governor's School, this experimental program features an experimental curriculum through which young professors administer concentrated doses of education reform to highly impressionable 17-year-olds.
Are you ready to divorce yourself from your body?
And although there are no grades, no tests, and no credit, admission is highly competitive. It would be impossible for me to describe to you just how exciting and unusual this educational adventure is.
But critics are describing this educational experience with great alarm and outrage. Mark Lowry is the former director for Governor's School Publicity.
I think the whole intent of the Governor's School in taking 350 to 400 students per summer is they're getting the best and the brightest students in the state of Arkansas, and they're trying to pick out, I think, those 4 or 5 or 6 exceptional students that could be future political leaders, and then to mold their minds in this more liberal humanistic thinking. And it's the 6-week program really amounts, I think, to mental hazing.
It was Bill Clinton's idea. It's his whole project. It's his educational masterpiece.
This was the seed of what Governor Bill Clinton had for the whole of Arkansas. And in the last legislative session, a bill was brought forth that now is law in Arkansas that forces all school districts to restructure their curriculum that's based on this, to where academics, reading, writing, and arithmetic are no longer the purpose for education.
How can I say this? Hillary Clinton, for instance, talked about converting the schools into something similar to Governor's School.
Rather than students learning how much 2 and 2 equals, they would be asked what they feel about 2 plus 2. Right now we have a move going on in our Arkansas schools called restructuring, where they are trying to move away from more objective, substantive learning into this subjective area of feelings and I think ultimately political correctness.
Students at Governor's School 92 summarized the restructured curriculum with a morose T-shirt creation.
I guess if I could express myself, I'd close my eyes and just think, let things wander through, because that's just the type of sensation you got when you were in Bill's class.
Kind of like that Baha'i idea, how you have Islam, Baha'i, Muslim, Christianity. They're all different kinds of trees, but underneath, it's a root system that grows together, and it's the same God. And a lot of people said, yeah, I believe in that. People did a lot of different things. You can dress just about any different way you want. We had, just almost naked people. It was real liberal, I think. The language, there was, every, like in the halls at school, every other word
you might have heard, not every other word, that's not true, but there was an awful lot of cursing.
Shh, don't tell I was the one that wore the skirts, the togas, you know, dressed up weird, because there I was free. They let you do it.
We only did, 3 books about that thick, and it's filled with all sorts of different stuff. And like the funny thing was to draw the word, the word sex and the roots.
You know, you can go around, you know, be free, feel as you want to feel. I mean, certain times we run out in the field and just spin around, jump up and down, roll in the grass with one another, because that's the way it was at night. We'd get together, story readings, talk, you know, play Mao or something like that, you know.
We did talk about morals a lot. We talked about relativity. You know, is everything relative, or are there specifics, you know, in society in general? And we talked about, you know, the almost perfect utopia.
When I went to governor's school, I could actually say, ah, and I'd been able to do that before. Not any summer, not anywhere, you know. A lot of places I went, even Christian camps, you still get that stress about, what am I doing wrong? God, please forgive me. You know, I'm a sinner. There it was like, hey, I can talk to God. Me and God are one. The world is one. The universe is one. Gosh, I love this place. Jump up and down. You know, just twirl around. They say relaxation, but there's a word past relaxation. There's a word somewhere in between that feeling of relaxation and love that we missed, and I don't know the word for it, but I came up with my own word. I called it a Gaia. It's spelled the same way backwards and forwards. It's A-Y-U-G-U-Y-A. And it just meant, you know, a lot of my friends went around and, you know, hey, Gaia, Gaia. You know, peace, love, happiness. You know, bringing back the hippie age, I guess you'd say.
There are 15 million lesbians and gay men waiting to hear your voice.
We learned about the upper class, the lower class, the ghetto. We watched, you know, movies like Harvey Milk. We learned about that. We learned about gay rights. We learned about everything. Those things that your parents say, this is wrong, this is right, you shouldn't see this type of thing because, hey, you know, that's just not, you know, right, you know.
And all you saw were bones and skeletons, dead bodies after dead bodies after dead bodies.
Cynical and morbid philosophies like those in these required films are part of the non-academic program that can leave students in confused, abstract states of mind. Indeed, the school emphasizes abstract intelligence rather than practical or concrete intelligence. Other prominent themes promoted by the school include radical homosexuality, classic socialism, pacifism, and a consistent hostility toward Western civilization and culture, especially the biblical foundations of the American Republic. A year after Clinton established the governor's school, he was rejected as governor. Successor Frank White, shocked by what he called garbage in the curriculum, directed that the school begin to express and support conventional moral values. But Clinton and his educational appointees intimidated Governor White with loud objections to any changes. Clinton accused White of badgering educators, and teachers at the governor's school simply went underground with their controversial philosophy until Clinton regained the governorship. Since then, the full curriculum at governor's school, including illegal psychological testing, has been more carefully concealed from parents and voters.
We said we would like to see a list of the people who were the discussion leaders and what their credentials were, and that information was never provided.
If parents were told that their student was going to be brought to a cloistered environment here at Hendrix College, and if those parents were told that their child was going to be brainwashed, they wouldn't let their child go. But they need to know that that is exactly what's happening.
For the 6-week period of time, they are not allowed to go home except during the weekend of July the 4th. they get to go home. The other times, they're really discouraged to call and talk on the phone. They can receive mail, but they're really encouraged to have as little contact with the outside world as possible. So it's a closed campus.
If Governor's School does not resemble a place of scholarship, just what does it resemble?
I'm not familiar with what a cult is myself, but I know that when the person that was associated with the school over there said they tried to form a cult that year, it rang real hard and true.
One student who attended mysterious cult-like meetings was Brandon Hawk, who committed suicide within a year of attending Governor's School. After his death, other parents called Brandon's father.
They're seeing the same thing in their kids that we saw in Brandon. They're a little bit resentful toward what they're asking them to do. There's been cases of drugs. They just sort of walk off and leave the family.
Losing children is a serious and painful complaint coming from parents of Governor's School alumni. One couple reported recovery of a lost daughter, but only after 2 years of deprogramming. This couple declined an interview, fearing that even the recollection of Governor's School might be harmful to their family.
Henry and I were excited about him going to Governor's School. But then after he finished those weeks there, we would talk to him on the phone. We would try to get him to come over. We would have family picnics, try to get him to come up to the lake. You know, the whole family's going to be there. They all want to see you. And he never would. He withdrew from us.
The students themselves say that, you know, this is the perfect place. I never want to go home. I caught myself saying it several times.
For instance, when I came back home, I'll be totally honest, I sort of kind of wrote a suicide note to myself, you know, not actually wanting to kill myself, but actually wanting to kill the reality of what society had been, you know, teaching me for so long. I'd been there for like, I guess an hour or two, and I was totally down. I was down because my family just didn't feel like my family.
I didn't blame Governor's School for Brandon's death, but I do believe he would still be alive had he not attended Governor's School.
All these things that you've held on to, honored, trusted, believe in, a lot of them gone, a lot of friends lost. My suicide note was basically, I didn't want to be back. I didn't want to be back.
I, as a parent, was really never aware of anything. They kept saying, you know, you may see a change in your child and all of this, but I thought, well, yeah, you know, he's going to be at Governor's School and he's going to really fly as a musician and things like that.
Where does academic excellence come in when you're teaching a philosophy? They're bringing a political agenda in the guise of academic excellence as something to promote and strengthen the top of the class, the best that Arkansas has.
The greatest influence of the Governor's School is to promote the thought with these students that to be intellectual, to be considered intellectual by your peers, whether it is in the area of math, science, language arts, or even music, to really be a true intellectual, you have to be a liberal thinker. And that liberal thinking not only takes in philosophy, it also takes in political thought. And that is the underlying message that permeates the whole 6 weeks of what I would call not teaching or learning, but indoctrination.
There's a course called Views of Man at Governor's School, and everyone had to go through this Views of Man course. And that's where they brought forth their radical, feminist, leftist ideology. And every person had to take that class, go through that. And as a matter of fact, it was 2 hours a day. We studied these, they're just radical ideas and whatnot, and they're all one-sided.
The manipulation would even go so far as to as just out-and-out trickery. I was allowed several years after I was not at the governor's school anymore to still come back and visit with some of the faculty, and went to the faculty lounge, which is one of the areas where they compare notes. The area 1, 2, and 3 instructors get together and they say, well, this is what I'm doing here. Oh, good, well, that's going to dovetail well with what I'm doing in this area, and yeah, that's going to work good in area 3 too. And one professor, he was a professor in college, but he was also teaching at the governor's school. He came in one day and he was just slapping his leg. He was just so happy. He said, it worked, it worked. The other instructor said, what are you talking about? What worked? And he said, ever since I walked into my class with a Bible under my arm and set it down on the table, they haven't dared challenge anything that I said. And the others started getting a big hoot out of that and laughing about it and saying, well, we might ought to start doing it too. That, I mean, I was amazed. I never came back again after that, because I realized then that it wasn't just something that just happened to be going on out here. It was something that was well orchestrated, it was well organized, and it was mind-bending and manipulative. And the faculty all knew that it was going on.
You can imagine taking the best, the cream of the crop, and taking those people that are going to be the leaders in our next generation and pushing in them the values that Governor Clinton has, that the leftist media has, that the values that go totally against what this nation were founded on. And that's what I was exposed to. There wasn't any warning. There wasn't anyone that said, okay, now you're going to have to take and put all your values that you grew up with and put them on the shelf and be exposed to this. If my parents had known what was going on there, they wouldn't have let me go.
As I was reading in Brandon's log, one of the first entries that he made was, I don't know what the discussion was, but he was just talking about what a neat person I was as his mom, and the separation that we were going to have to go through when he went to college, and it was just a very sweet thing. And then a couple of weeks later, he had made an entry in there about how materialistic we were, and just some really negative comments about me. And I thought, my God, I hadn't even seen him. And there had been a change in his perception of me.
And they wouldn't say, oh, go rebel, but they would say, have your own ideas, and just because somebody who's influential over your life does not agree with you doesn't mean it's wrong, and you should probably pursue it anyway.
So it tears down their authority figure system, and then they help establish another one. And the authority figure that they establish in their life is the student himself.
You know, we'd sit down and, you know, talk about, you know, each other's parents sometime and say, well, you know, my mom is like this and my dad's like this, but gosh, you know, I can see that they're wrong.
Ellen Gilchrist, who is a renowned writer, spoke to the students, and she was quoted as saying, students, totally, do me a favor, totally ignore your parents. Listen to them, but then forget them, because you need to start using your own stuff, your real stuff that you have. That is not just an isolated incident of one speaker coming in and saying that. That is the message that comes through the Area 2 classes. It comes through the Area 3 classes. There's really absolute collusion throughout the whole 6 weeks. The films, the Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, the recreational activities, the music that the students learn, the drama presentations, all of those are done to try and help develop a belief that there are no absolutes.
You would think there would be some academic challenges, things getting you ready for college and whatnot. Our main textbook that I remember from there is a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And the book is totally, it has Hindu, it's the Hindu religion defined, and it has rebellion along with that. But
it's okay to challenge authority because you are part of an elite and you have that right to challenge that authority.
They always started, like the first couple of days you'd hear, we started with tens of thousands of applications for governor school. Came down to 1,000, and now it's you guys are it, you know.
They convinced the students that you are elite. The reason that you're not going to be understood when you go home, you're not going to be understood by your parents, your friends, your pastor, anybody, is because you have been treated to thought that they can't handle.
As strange as it sounds, we even talked about, hey, why don't all of us get some money and, you know, move out somewhere, buy this large amount of land, you know, acres and acres, and all meet and come back together and just start our own utopian society, because if it was anything like governor's school, it would be totally utopia. And plus, hey, if we ever had kids, you know, they'd be smart because, hey, we were supposed to be, what, the top, you know, some of the tops of Arkansas.
But it's really here. This intellectual elitism, this cultural elitism, gives them the right to make decisions whether the people want them or not. Because then it gives them the right to be able to say, we know better than you.
It's very frightening to some people about what's happening at governor's school.
I don't know who exactly knows what's going on. I don't think a lot of people do understand what's going on at all. I really don't. It's kind of like I felt like I needed to not talk about it. I don't know why even. Maybe it was just because we were supposed to stay here, and the fact that we couldn't leave, and when we did leave, we had to be back at a certain time, and it's just, I just felt like, hey, you know, I'm really not supposed to talk about this. And no one else that I'd ever talked to before, that had gone the years before, would talk to me about it.
The more people learn about the activist agenda of governor's school, the more they see the connections to the governmental and civic process. They're beginning to realize that if they don't involve themselves, schools like governor's school will proliferate. It appears that governor's school has taught America a valuable lesson after all.
So we can see that Bill Clinton and his New Age agenda definitely will have a New Age program of psychological programming our young people to enter in to the New World Order in the year 2000. Jesus said in Matthew 24:42 to watch world news. That's exactly what we've done today. Yet there is something else that we've been programmed into. This has been going on for many years now. There is coming a cashless society. It's approaching at a very rapid rate. To be exact, France introduced the smart card in 1982. This is a debit card which instantly withdraws funds from the cardholder's bank account containing a computer chip. So this computer chip knows how much money you have in the account, and it knows how much to take out and put into the bank's account or whatever company that you're doing business with. All this information was found in the International Herald Tribune, June 11th, 1985. Now, by 1984, the Japanese company, Toshiba, I can't even pronounce this name, but anyway, Toshiba, but it had developed a more complex smart card than the French had. It contained a battery and a miniaturized computer, and it serves as a debit card, an ID card, a medical record of your entire life, and a passport to other countries. All this was found in the World Press Review in August of 1984. Also in 1984, the Visa card was first used for an international transaction. What it did, this Visa Electron debit card was inserted into an automatic teller in Sydney, Australia. It actually took the currency, the exchange from the value of American currency to that of Australian currency, and it gave United States money to this person that inserted their card. This was found in the International Herald Tribune, March 26th of 1984. So definitely there is coming a trend toward a cashless society, and this is on a global level. In 1985, MasterCard International introduced a smart card in the United States. It contained tiny microchips. This debit card actually stores an image of the cardholder's signature, and it calculates information about his bank account. Now, subscribers to both Blue Cross and Blue Shield their medical insurance. And the state of Maryland actually carried a plastic identity card containing their complete medical history. This was all readable by scanning devices and computer. And that information was found in the Washington Times, September 27th, 1985. Now, is all this beginning to sound like an Orwellian 1984 scenario for total people control? I believe it is. In 1986, a completely cashless society became underway in the country of Singapore. All cash transactions were prohibited in certain places such as supermarkets, gas stations, major department stores, government offices, and hospitals. People must, at that time, start using their plastic debit cards to do any kind of money, to instantly transfer funds. If any money was moved from one place to the other, it had to be done through instant transfer of funds. Residents there began shortly after that to have to pay their taxes, their utility bills, their hospital bills, and their traffic fines with debit cards. So their government now has closed down all cash payments to government. This was found in Insight Magazine, March 10th of 1986. So I believe that you and I, starting back in the decade of the 80s, were start to be conditioned for change. And now, all of a sudden, in 1993, we're going to see a brand new president go into the White House, and he's already stated, and the media is playing it up big, that we will have change, and that there was a mandate from the people for change. I believe that you and I have been programmed for social change in the world at large, and in your and my own lifestyle over the last decade. Anyone who studied the New Age movement, international socialism, communism, and the movements for world government knows that they have certain symbols. The triangle or pyramid shape with the all-seeing eye is the most prevalent symbol in the New Age today. I'll hold up a magazine that shows the pyramid on the back of the $1 bill. This is just one of the symbols of the New Age movement today. But this symbol, a triangle, is everywhere if you began to look after this is brought to your attention. And the symbol literally means, to those in the New Age and the hierarchy of the New Age movement, it means change. So, those specifically in charge of the movement today are trying to move us into a new international economic order, commonly called the New World Order. And these symbols are being placed everywhere so that you and I can subconsciously have the change process being programmed into our mind. The idea of a change is part of a worldwide revolution that's now in progress. And you can see it everywhere once it's brought to your attention. Now, the Delta logo, which is a triangle, that's all a Delta is being used by such organizations as Alcoholics Anonymous, the Arthritis Foundation, the American Diabetes Association, the YMCA now in the 80s started using a triangle, the National Institute for Health, the National Communications Center, the Government Employees Mutual Benefit Association, and on and on. You could list page after page of organizations now that for some reason they have restructured the design of their corporate images and have inserted a triangle or a delta figure, which to the New Age movement means change. It's gone so far that this delta symbol is also used in the Senior Olympics and in various hospital and health care organizations. The National Education Association, which has to do with our children, has long been training teachers to serve as change agents in the schools, to promote the United Nations-inspired humanistic, anti-Christian global education. And they first met at Lindenwood College in 1950 to begin to instruct teachers on how to bring the United Nations and its agenda into the public schools. On December 13th of 1982, CBS Television's Evening News was showing a Texas classroom where they taught bilingual, that's both Spanish and they taught American classes. They had a teacher that spoke each, so that no matter who in the classroom, whether you spoke Spanish or English, you could be taught. They held up to show an example of what went on in that particular class one of their drill cards on mathematics. It said 5 minus 5 equal, rather than a 0, it had a triangle or a delta figure. So once again, they're inserting in every place everyone can come into contact with this delta figure. And this is one of the highest symbols in the occult. And after all, the book of Revelation chapter 13 does say without any apology that this end-time system rising on the face of the earth today will be given its impetus by Satan, the devil, an invisible spirit being. And this is his symbol, and they're inserting it everywhere to program our minds. An increasing number of educational organizations are also using the Delta logo or the triangle. Just a few examples: Hillsdale College, the Bancroft School, Babson College, and a Berkline School, which is a Vermont-based experimental educational school, and its very purpose is the change of the human being so that they would be able to fit into the new society that's coming at the year 2000. A large number of corporations are now using the Delta logo. Some of them are Allied Signal, Sandoz Corporation, American Cyanamide, RKO General, Trialog Control Systems, Avery Corporation, Leading Edge, which is a computer system, and many, many others are beginning to use these logos all over so that they can promote the New Age agenda of change. Some of the banks in the United States are even using logos now in their symbols, such as the National Westminster Bank, Union Planners Bank, Union Planners National Bank, also the Jyski Bank and the United Jersey Bank. There's even a company which sells safety deposit box. They've renamed their corporation and they call it the Pyramid Safe Deposit Box. And what do they have? A pyramid. And that's the prominent logo on all of their advertising. Full-page color advertisements have appeared back in the 1980s in magazines by introducing Walden Books, also advertising Bell Atlantic Phone Company. And they would use various combinations of triangles and then pyramids with circles around it. And many people are now familiar with a magazine called Omni. It's a New Age magazine which prominently features triangles on its covers all the time. Not long ago, this was back in the latter part of the 80s, a sculpture was placed in the New Hart Senate office building. It was named Mountain and Clouds. Now, all it is a group of pyramids, which is a triangle, one of which contains a large circle. Now, you have to understand symbolism in the occult, Satan worship, worship of Lucifer. A circle means infinity. It shows that the whole world and everything on it is reincarnating toward nirvana. So this is nothing but a New Age program placed right in the new Hart Senate office building in the United States. Plans have been made to install a 66-foot high glass pyramid in the courtyard of Louvre Museum in Paris, France. Also back in the 1980s, and this was the decade of programming and preparing for changes in the 90s, there were TV commercials put out by Chanel No. 5 perfume. And it showed a high computer-generated pyramid in the background of a woman in a red dress. And then here was Transamerica's pyramid-shaped bank building with a light flashing from the top of it at the right. So here was the whole screen filled practically with pyramids. An obelisk, which once again is a New Age symbol. So the question becomes, are we being programmed to accept the New Age movement and the hierarchy, those in control of the New Age movement? Because the New Age movement will be a socialistic world order ruled by what is called the Masters of Wisdom. These are nothing more than spirit beings. We in Christianity know it as demons. They're wicked spirits who rebelled against God. They followed Lucifer in his rebellion, and they're the ones who are now making contact with human beings. And they're telling human beings that man's time is about up for his evolutionary process. And he talked to a woman, and her friend called me personally from Colorado on November 20th, 1992, and said that 6 of these spirit beings told this woman that time is running out for man. So now these spirit entities are going to come like a flood into the earth so that they can help man to evolve before the year 2000 and be prepared for the new world order. A man by the name of Paul Zamarian, he's the president of the Great Seal Foundation. When you look on the back of the $1 bill, you'll see a pyramid with an all-seeing eye at the top of it. And he literally wanted this particular seal to be cast, have a die cast made of it. And it never had. Here's what he said that symbol of the pyramid was for. Quote, "It symbolizes the unity of all mankind." End of quote. That statement can be found in the Federal Times, July 5th, 1982. So once again, on the back of our dollar bill, we're being programmed every time we look at that for the unity of all mankind. And they say that the pyramid, the reason the capstone is offset is it's standing there alone until all mankind can unite, and then we'll be a one-world government, a one-world religion, and the capstone will fit to the pyramid, and it will be a completed project. And we're being brainwashed all the time to accept this. This has even come into our military. The New Earth Battalion and its Delta Force, notice the name Delta, the triangle, has now infiltrated into the United States Army. Their stated aim is to redistribute the power and responsibility throughout the ranks of the military. Their focus is on small groups of individuals. There would be 3 people working together. They call it a trilogy. This is found in the New Age Journal in February of 1981. Many people in the senior program of the Pentagon, old-time generals, are now a part of this program. Notice sometime, if you ever see it, the emblem on the New Age fascist type of former street gang member vigilantes parading around in many streets, and they came to St. Louis, Missouri. They're called the Guardian Angels. They had a white t-shirt emblazed in red, and it had the all-seeing eye with a rays coming out from it in a pyramid and wings on the outside. Once again, the all-seeing eye of Lucifer overlooking the evolution of mankind toward godhood. You see, those in the New Age movement do not believe in a personal God. They don't believe there is a literal being who created all things, and that he's the one that put man on earth and said, I'll make man in my image. No, they believe in reincarnation, and they believe that in pantheism, the rocks, the trees, air, wind, human beings, animals, plant life, everything put together, that is God. God is nothing more than a force. It's Mother Nature. It's Gaia, G-A-I-A. That's why there's a movement today to go back to the worship of the Queen of Heaven and the worship of Mother Earth. You'll find Delta designs and logos are used by several of these New Age organizations, including the Maitreya World Foundation, the Tara Center. This is the major distributor of all literature for Benjamin Creme. Now, Benjamin Creme is the one who introduced in 1982 on 25 of the largest circulated newspapers, full page saying, the Christ is now here. They use triangles. But there's someone else that uses triangles, and this is the Rosicrucians. The Rosicrucians can trace their origination further back in history than any other secret society, all the way back to Egypt. And I own one of their personally printed books, and it was printed on their own printing press in 1929, and they trace their origin at least 1,500 years before Jesus Christ. So truly, that's why the Bible continually talks about Egypt as a place of spiritual deadness. There's another organization called the Spiritual Unity of Nations. They also use the triangle or the all-seeing eye as a symbol. They're also pushing for a New Age Christ. There's a man by the name of James H. Billington. He wrote in his book, Fire in the Minds of Men, he pointed out that there was a revolutionary force called the Illuminati that used geometric forms as symbols. This was their way of communication. They would have three persons that form what they call a triangle, and they would be interconnected with each other, and this is how they would push their agenda, working in threes. I think this is very remarkable because there is yet other organizations that also use this three-person triangular communication network. One of them used to be called Lucifer Trust. They had what was called Lucifer Publishing Company. They changed their name to Lucius Trust in the early 1930s because so many people became familiar with the name Lucifer and became wary of it. There are other Eastern establishment organizations that also use the word triangle. They use the geometric figure of delta, of three sides that we call a triangle. The Trilateral Commission, which is working for world government established by David Rockefeller. They have what is called the Triangle Papers. They also have, in addition to that, the Trialogue that they publish. The United Nations organization actually reveals its ultimate allegiance in its meditation room. I'll hold up a book called The Cult of the All-Seeing Eye. This particular book goes into great detail describing the meditation room in the United Nations organization and its symbolism and how it all comes right out of the occult and demon worship, and preparing the minds of human beings to accept the New World Order. The meditation room is actually constructed in a wedge shape, like a pie, except the very end is cut off and it's blunt and flat instead of in a point. And when you get above it and look down, all it is a triangle laying on its side with the capstone taken off. That's all it is, right in the very meditation room of the United Nations organization. When you go into the United States Capitol and its prayer room, you will see that it is in the form of a pyramid. And so here the United States is being inundated with triangles, pyramids, New Age movement information. This organization, Lucis Trust, is based in New York City. It has centers also in London, England, and Geneva, Switzerland. Its philosophy is theosophy. It's a humanistic, occult viewpoint of life. Lucis Trust Triangles program is one of the ways that they help to promote the New World Order. Hundreds of groups of 3 individuals simultaneously imagine triangles of light. This is their New Age occultic termination. And then, or terminology, and then they recite what they call the Great Innovation, which has actually appeared in Reader's Digest magazine. And this great innovation is a prayer asking for the return of the Christ. But it is not the Christ of the Bible. That's what I must make clear. This whole movement is sponsored by Satan. Since they believe that Lucifer is the god of this world and he is a god of good, then they believe he is the administrator of light. So when they pray this great innovation that light would come into the world, they're talking about Satan the devil, not Jesus Christ, the one and only Savior of God Almighty. So with this background, it's not very surprising that the writings and one world philosophy of a man by the name of Robert Mueller, who used to be the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, is very often quoted by Lucis Trust in their literature. And one of their pieces of literature is called The Beacon, meaning a progenitor of light, because this Lucis Trust organization has had a long-term standing with the United Nations. A few years ago, in the 1980s, maybe many of you will remember, a television series called The Phoenix. It had a hero, and this man had obtained paranormal powers by wearing a glowing circular medallion, and it had inscribed a winged triangle. So here was a triangle with wings on it. This strongly resembles the 3rd stage of the Blue Lodge of Masonry according to Lucis Trust. The Phoenix is a metamorphosis. It's a resurrection and a transformation of an ordinary man into a divine man, according to Lucis Trust. It makes a person a godlike being. It's nothing more than the New Age deception where Lucifer in the Garden of Eden actually offered Eve, and she said, if you'll only do what I say instead of what the other person, who happened to be God Almighty, then you will be as gods in the human flesh. And so once again, this is exactly the agenda that is being pushed on the world today. Now, what are some of the origins of the New Age movement? Alice Bailey of Lucius Trust said that the hierarchy is responsible for the New Age movement, and that it began, according to her book, Externalization of the Hierarchy, page 566, it began with its work of destruction, or the social destabilization of governments in the year 1775. Now it's interesting, but in the year 1776, the Order of the Illuminati was founded by Adam Weishaupt. And Illuminati means illuminated ones. And the Illuminati actually rose out of Freemasonry, which came anciently out of the Rosicrucian order. This information was found in Proofs of a Conspiracy, page 9. In 1923, the publishing company of Lucius Trust was called the Lucifer Publishing Company. And it took its name from the periodical Lucifer that was issued by its founder, H.P. Blavatsky. Now, H.P. Blavatsky was a lady from Russia. This information was found in the book A Planned Deception, page 246. In 1935, their original great invocation became a reality, and here's how it starts out. Quote, "Let the forces of light bring illumination to mankind." End of quote. That was quoted in the introduction, page 5 of the book Externalization of the Hierarchy. So the plan of the hierarchy is apparently to promote Adam Weishaupt's Illuminism through a socialistic world revolution by a few powerful men in high positions that are working behind the scene. And that's confirmed in the Bible in James, the 5th chapter, verse 1 through 6, where there's been a few powerfully rich men in the last days who are heaping up riches to themselves, and they use other people as their slaves to provide the labor force for those riches. Lucius Trust regarded, according to their own literature, the Beacon in September and October 1983, they regarded Giuseppe Mazzini with very great respect. They acknowledged Giuseppe Mazzini's initiation into the Carbonari, which is an Illuminati group in Italy. Now, it was Giuseppe Mazzini in the 19th century who chose Albert Pike from Arkansas to help him unify all Freemasonic societies around the world at the very highest levels, the 33rd degree, and they had to be handpicked from there. This was found in the Occult Theology, page 209. Albert Pike was given the title the Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry and named the order the New and Reformed Palladian Rite. And according to the book Occult Theology, or Theocracy, which was written by Lady Queensberry in England, the Palladian lodges were called triangles. And it was acknowledged that Palladianism was essentially a Luciferian rite. Page 216 of her book. Giuseppe Mazzini made himself the chief of political action for world government. And then Albert Pike was to take up the philosophical side. And with them as the head and at the pinnacle of all Freemasonic lodges in secret the world over, they could now penetrate every country in the world and began to place their hand-picked men in places of government. And that's exactly what they've done in the United States of America, especially since Franklin Delano Roosevelt forward to the very present time in history with their man, Mr. Bill Clinton, who came out of Arkansas, went to Georgetown University, which trains all of the American diplomats in foreign relations and foreign government. And then he went on a Rhodes Scholarship to England after Professor Carroll Quigley pointed him in that direction. Came back and got his law degree in Yale University. Then went back and became governor of the state of Arkansas, preparing for the day when he would step on the scene and bring the final structure of world government to the United States. But now let's go back in history just a little more. When the order of the Illuminati was suppressed in Bavaria, Germany, the government in the Bavarian government in the 18th century captured some of its leaders, and some of its leaders testified and showed and even wrote a book, showed that they were planning worldwide government and the destruction of every government on earth, and how that they had gained control of the French lodges of the Grand Orient Masonry. They were the chief organizers of the French Revolution, which was to become their model state for all future countries. And they are the guiding forces today behind the international socialist movement. And just because they say communism is dead and the Cold War is over does not mean that socialism is dead. Because Nikita Khrushchev said that they would bury the United States. And how were they going to do it if it wouldn't be a hot war? He said, we will put people into the Congress, call them liberals, and pass every part of the socialist legislative agenda under the term liberals. And now what is Bill and Hillary Clinton? They are liberal Democrats. And now they're in a position with a liberal Congress to pass the final agenda for world government by the year 2000. The Illuminati's goal, in addition to abolishing all religion, which Mr. Bill Clinton pioneered that with his governor's school in the state of Arkansas, and probably will seek that same agenda for the elite of the United States, and particularly Christianity is what they want to destroy. But he also sought to enforce universal equality of all peoples. What do we see on the world scene today? Didn't we see all of a sudden the ERA amendments on the agenda in America? Didn't we see the Equal Rights Amendment, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States passed? Don't we see, or haven't we seen since the early 1950s, which nobody wants, forced busing and integration of all schools? Haven't we seen on the African continent nations which did not want to be mixed now forced, like South Africa? Equality of all people. This was all the way back in 1776. Now, I agree, everybody on earth should have a good living standard, but everybody is not equal. I don't care how you put it. Some people have a better background than others. They have more education. They have more drive, genetic structures. So there will never be equality unless it's a forced thing. And that's exactly what the Illuminati wants to do. They want their humanistic global socialism to be placed upon your and my head. Socialism and equality just may simply serve as fronts for an even more ominous situation. That is a totalitarian type of world government. Notice what socialist Walter Lippmann wrote in his column in the New York Times as far back as 1917, when the Bolshevik Revolution had just occurred. I quote, "In awaiting the establishment of world government, universal socialism will serve as its keystone." End of quote. So will world socialism be the descriptive term used by the New World Order to deceive people and keep them from rebelling against an increasingly totalitarian regime? We know that it's going to be absolute control over everybody on the face of the earth. They're going to achieve it through their new international economic system, prophesied in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 16 to 18. Now, Helen P. Blavatsky, the founder of Lucis Trust, was not only a theosophist, but she was a Fabian socialist, which means she believed in passing laws gradually, little by little, until socialism was hoisted upon the people without their even recognizing what it was. She was also a member of some high-level Masonic orders. She was a perfect mistress in the ancient and primitive order of Memphis. She was a member of the Order of Mizram, a member of the Grand Orient Lodge of France, under direct control of the Illuminati. Alice A. Bailey, which replaced her upon her death, who has written at least 25 books, and every one of these books were dictated to her verbatim by a demon that called itself a master of wisdom, Dwal Cole. DK, she calls it in her books, has laid bare her philosophy for the Lucis Trust. Bailey has clearly spelled out in her books the importance of Freemasonry to Lucis Trust and the New Age movement's plan for a socialistic world government. She states concerning the Masonic movement, quote, that it will meet the need of those who can and should wield power, end of quote. She said that Masonry is, and I quote again, the seat of initiation, and under the all-seeing eye, and we know that is the Luciferian symbol, the work can go forward. Masonry is a far more occult organization than can be realized, and is intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultists. End of quote, page 511 of her book, Externalization of the Hierarchy. According to Alice Bailey, the three phases of the unfolding of the New Age movement before us correspond to the 3 degrees in the Blue Lodge. Very interesting, isn't it? She says in her book, this is page 574 and 575, The Externalization of the Hierarchy. The phases are, number 1, the poor and destitute candidate emerges into the light. Number 2, there is a complete economic reorientation of the world. Then number 3, there is a major initiation whereby people realize that Christ has returned to earth. So she is now preparing people through her literature and her books for the new world order. A man by the name of Benjamin Krim is the torchbearer for the emergence of Maitreya the Christ. He also states in his publication, Share International, September of 1984, page 18, that Freemasonry, as one of the paths to initiation, will be open to all those men and women who fit themselves for entry into the New Age. Now remember, in the movie that was February 22nd or 15th to the 22nd, 1987, the miniseries America, spelled with a K? What did it say? The young man who was the son of the president said anyone who would not fit into the New Age would be killed. And he said it twice. They would be crushed. So this is what they're saying. Anyone who will not follow the leadership of those who are fitting themselves for leadership will be destroyed. But what about the New Age economic plan for you and for me, that they've been conditioning us through the sighting of triangles and the delta since the early 1980s. Alice Bailey's book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, published by Lucius Trust, provides an outline for the New Age economic plan. I will quote page 511. The three main channels through which the preparation of the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church. Stand up and take notice. It says the church, Christian church, and they're preparing the New Age through it. How many people go to their churches and hear nothing but socialism? They hear nothing of the dynamic message from the Bible anymore, and that there is coming a kingdom that the God of heaven will set up. She also said that it would come through the Masonic fraternity and the educational field. And now we've got the educational president and First Lady, Bill and Hillary Clinton, in the White House. Certain of these adepts, she said, are authorities of modern financial matters. And they have already prepared, she says, a sophisticated system of barter. It will be no cash, no coins, no checks. It will be a sophisticated system of bartering. And she said it will supersede big business and private enterprise, on page 569 of her book. She went on to state that there will be a complete economic reorientation by which humanity will be relieved of all economic anxiety, on page 574. How are they going to do that? When the time comes, she says, there will be the financial adjuster that comes on the scene, the New Age Messiah. Because you see, in all this New Age movement, socialism, communism, the New Age movement, all of those working for world government that reject Jesus Christ, they say the only thing we have to do is change the economic practices of the world. We need to redistribute all the wealth of the world so everybody shares equally, and it will be utopia on earth. So how are they doing it? They said when the financial adjuster comes on the scene, they will already have set up the potential for a system of bartering. Anyone in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri can go to a brand new superstore called Shop and Save on St. Charles Rock Road. If you don't want to pay cash or write a check, you can give them your ATM card, instant transfer of funds from your account to the store's account. And you and I know that every time we go to the grocery store, we go to many other outlets, hardware stores. You can't hardly go anywhere anymore unless they use what is called scanners. I want to hold up an illustration of the beginning of their bartering system. Here it is, right on Betty Crocker's yellow cake mix. Here is what is called a barcode. This barcode is encased in the number 666. Every barcode is. All you have to do is write to the barcode, Universal Product Code Association, get the listing of the three types of barcodes. And right here on the second section of barcodes is the number 6, two little thin lines that show what the number 6 is. Then you take this particular configuration, and that same barcode is on the right-hand framework, straight down the middle and all the way to the left, 666. Now, what does your Bible say about a system that's going to come on the scene at the very close of the age, in which the living God of heaven and his Son Jesus Christ will come back and destroy that system? What kind of control will it have over the people? It will be economic. Because in Revelation 13, verse 16, 17, and 18, it says, no man And it even illustrates the various types of people, rich or poor, free or slave. It doesn't matter your status in life. It said nobody would be able to buy or sell, that's transact business, buy food, an automobile, clothes, pay your light and your utility bills. It doesn't matter. Nobody will be able to buy and sell unless they receive the mark. And they'll only be able to receive the mark if you accept the adjuster of finances, as they call it, or the New Age Messiah as God. If you accept that individual and worship him as God, then they will give you a number so that you can participate in the system and buy and sell. Do we believe that this is real? Do we really? It's on the scene. We can see all the signs right around us. In the January 1982 issue of Emergence, put out by the Terra Group, Benjamin Krim stated, quote, "There is a group of high initiates, industrialists, economists, and administrators of great experience and achievement who, with the hierarchy," who is the hierarchy? Satan and his high-ranking demons of the spirit world that call themselves masters of wisdom, that actually either control them outside, speak to them verbally, or they possess them. And they're called by Shirley MacLaine in her book, Out on the Limb, walk-ins. People who are possessed by the masters of wisdom and have tremendous knowledge, superhuman knowledge. And Benjamin Krim says it's these people who have already worked out the plans and the blueprints for the redistribution of the wealth of the world. He said in his book on page 8, Emergence, January 1982. He didn't say it will be worked out. He said the blueprint is already available. But he went on and said more. He went on and also stated that the time must be right where mankind will accept this adjuster of finances. And they're waiting in the wings until mankind is ready to accept them. They won't establish their new world order until that time. They already have a sort of a CIA working all over the globe today. It's called the International Reporting Information Systems, abbreviated IRIS, I-R-I-S. And some of the most famous people on earth heads up the North American, and then the European, the African, and the Asian organization, the headquarters for it, where they gather information just like the CIA does. It's a world bank of information on all peoples everywhere, preparing for the day when they will be able to institute their world government. Oh yes, I believe without a doubt whatsoever that you and I are going to see the day when this instituted world government will affect you and me. And according to Revelation 13, it says no man can make war with a beast, with this end-time system. Have we seen in the decade of the 1990s the greatest military power on earth go into the Middle East and enforce United Nations mandates? The United States of America used its superior military apparatus. Now they're going into places such as Somalia. They'll probably go into Yugoslavia and any other place. They will use the might of the United States to go in and not let other nations upset the emerging New World Order. In 1982, Share International and the United States-based Terra Group ran costly full-page ads on the 25 largest circulated newspapers of the world. They announced that the Christ is now here. And here's what it said, and I quote, "In answer to our call for help as world teacher for all humanity. The Christ is here. Expect to see him soon. Share and save the world. End of quote. Remember, they want to redistribute all wealth of the world. They want to redistribute the wealth away from the United States, Western Europe, and England, and Japan, because we have all the wealth. So that means if they're going to equally share with everybody, that'll reduce our living standard and raise theirs until we're all equal. While there have been many bogus Christ and claiming to be Christ, they don't deserve any of our attention, because Jesus said don't pay attention to them. But the Bible also says there will come one who will sit in the very temple of God and claim to be God, and he will be the one that heads up this end-time system. This man, the Maitreya, and his introduction of what is called the Christ corresponds to the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the United Nations, and the Club of Rome. Their cry for someone to bring salvation to the world. So I think since they're all working together, we'd better pay close attention to this particular movement. When Maitreya the Christ emerges, now this is their belief, not mine, I want you to understand that, his first task will be to launch a crash program, according to Benjamin Krim, in which aid is given to third world countries by the industrialized nations. Are we suddenly seeing in the latter part of 1992 and into the 1993 and on, suddenly the rich nations now intervening in the affairs of third and fourth world countries? What did he say? He said his initial program will be to start aiding and giving help to the third world countries. He said then there would be a restructure of the world society along more just lines. This would necessitate, and I'm quoting, total control of all our institutions, end of quote. Aren't the institutions of a society simply the extension of the people within the society? So if it's going to control totally all of our institutions, that means they will control totally the people. Shortly after what he called Declaration Day, when this New Age Messiah will come on the scene, he said there will be masters of wisdoms who will rule over certain areas of the world, certain nations of the earth, and they will head certain governments in key nations of the world in order to transfer the assets of the industrialized nations to the less developed countries through a new United Nations agency established for that purpose. So world government, according to him, and I'm quoting him, will come inevitably as a logical result of the acceptance by humanity that it is one. We are one, a one world. And what was it that Bill Clinton had in his governor's school? What was it one of the young men that was interviewed said? We're one. Everybody is one. Benjamin Krim went on to say that every country will be invited to make an inventory of its assets and its needs. Notice, it said all of its assets, not its surpluses. All the assets of every country. And then they will be divided up among all nations equally. Do you and I believe that these people exist? I think we'd better, because Jesus Christ foretold it long ago. Does this sound like a worldwide super government that is now about to take place? Yes, it does. I want to read to you now Revelation chapter 13 in closing for the day. Revelation chapter 13. This is very important that we understand this. If you haven't proven that there is a God, and he created all things, and he's in charge, this will be meaningless to you. But if you've proven it, and if you've proven that God is alive, and that God has a son called Jesus Christ who is going to come back to this earth and interfere in world affairs, and that he has the power to foretell the end from the beginning, and that foretelling of the end of world events from thousands of years ago proves he exists if they happen exactly like he said, then you can get your life right with him and prepare for what's about to occur. In chapter 13 of Revelation, verse 1, it said, I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast. A beast in Bible prophecy is a government, and it would rise up out of the sea of mankind, out of all governments. Then in verse 2, the latter part, it tells who will give its power. The dragon. And the dragon is identified as Satan the devil. And he said it will give him great authority. Then in verse 3 of Revelation 13, it said, all the world will wonder after this beast, or this world government, when it comes. They'll not understand as a whole, but they will be glad that it's here. It is designed to solve all the problems of the world, they will think. Then in verse 4, it said they worshiped the dragon. They didn't realize they were worshiping an evil spirit being who is unseen by those inhabitants of the earth. But they'll actually be worshiping him through this person that heads the top of this government. And it said, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So this world government will have such power that nobody will be able to stand against it. Then it says in verse 5, it will last for 42 months. Then it says in verse 7 that it will make war with the saints and overcome them, true Christians and followers of Jesus Christ, and that he will continue to rule and reign until a certain event. And in Revelation 17, it gives the narrative even in more detail. Then notice verse 12 to 14. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind. So you see, these masters of wisdom, Benjamin Creme and Alice Bailey talked about, will be ruling over each of the global groupings of nations, 10 different regional governments. And shall give their power and strength unto the beast, to this world dictator. These shall make war with the Lamb, capital L, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So, if you get your life right and know that it's right with a living Jesus Christ, when the right time comes, you and I will have the opportunity with him as God leading the way to overthrow this end-time system and bring real happiness and joy and peace and utopia, not the false New Age movement of the New Age agenda.
Our Father in heaven, we thank you for bringing us here this day to hear your message given to us by Dave Smith. Father, for those of us in the church, and your called church, those of us that have children, we know that there's sometimes nothing we can do. Sometimes we can't afford private schools or can't afford to keep moving around from school to school to find one that's not teaching the New Age. And perhaps by the time our children are in school, there won't be any of them. Father, all we can do is ask that you put your angels and your Holy Spirit about them and protect them and have them learn what you know is right to learn. Father, we know that nothing can overcome the Holy Spirit except the fact that if a human totally rejects it. Father, we know that as children that they don't know that choice yet, and they won't know that choice till they become old enough to understand that. We ask that you keep your angels about them, keep your Holy Spirit about them, all children in this church, and protect them. Father, we ask that you help protect everyone else in this church, be with those that are sick and ill today, and be with those that couldn't be with us today. We thank you for all these things. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.